So, on this day, we be x-raying the security challenges and the security situation in Nigeria generally. What have we done wrong? What have we not done at all? What should we be doing to make Nigeria, from north to south, from east to west, safe for citizens and foreigners alike? After all, security, they say, is the primary duty of governments. We have an array of guests who will be joining us this afternoon to profile solutions to the problems. Colonel Tony Iyam is a retired Army officer. Mr. Austin Iwa is a retired Assistant Inspector General of Police. And of course, Jude Ilo is the Country Director, Open Society Initiative for West Africa, OSIWA. But before we go into our discussions with this array of eminent guests, let's take this special report, which chronicles some of the security challenges in Nigeria. And the report is put together by correspondent Ihotu Odo.
Security is a major challenge for government across the globe, but the geometric rise in the number of security challenges in Nigeria is something none could have predicted, say, about 20 years ago.
Unfortunately, the incumbent administration, if they want to be sincere with themselves, they have not performed up to what they presented they were going to do.
The agitation is increasing more and more. Why? People do not have jobs.
Until a situation where the police's capacity to handle those internal security is enhanced and where we see a change, then unfortunately this approach where the military is being used will not help us.
This new wave of terror has its origin from the so-called insurgency by Boko Haram. The Nigerian state waged a war against the insurgents, a war it once said it had technically won. But 12 years down the insurgency line, it appears nothing could be further from the truth. The sack of service chiefs after a prolonged clamor, the continued questioning of the president's handling of the situation, and cries for an overhaul of the country's security architecture have done little or changed the situation.
The new one should think about institutional reform. Like I said to you earlier, it has nothing to do with Brutal, Moseki, or whoever.
What Nigerians expect is that they should get this issue of Boko Haram off our radar, off our psyche, off our political discussion.
But the situation isn't completely hopeless if the stories coming from the military are anything to go by about the recent surrender of over 8,000 Boko Haram. Even that has been greeted with skepticism.
The danger is that a terrorist who have not really repented, who have not been debriefed, who have not gone through a de-radicalization process, they are released into the society.
To ensure that they are fit enough to go through the proper procedure, and they will definitely go through this procedure. We are sorting them out so that those ones don't have any part, that they didn't play any part, will be handled separately, while those ones that took part actively, the combatants, will be treated separately.
It cannot be denied that there has been a recent crackdown on bandits in the northwest. The downside of that is that the fleeing bandits appear to have moved to other areas where they are continuing from where they started. Then just this week, Anambra State was back in the news with the killing of Dr. Chike Akunyele, husband of late Professor Dora Akunyele. This was followed by a daredevil attack on a police station in Oromba North, where several policemen were feared killed. It therefore may be right to say Nigerians should be skeptical about ongoing security efforts. The onus perhaps lies on the security agencies to let their actions speak louder than words.
It's AIT special program. We call it Independent Special. Today on the program, we'll be looking at Nigeria's security situation yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And like I said, I'm joined by an array of eminent guests for the discussions. In the studio here with me, I have retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, AIG, Mr. Austin Iwa. Mr. Iwa, good to see you,
Thank you for having me, and happy independence.
Same to you, sir. And of course, we're joined virtually by two other eminent guests. Colonel Tony Iyam, retired, is a security analyst. He joins us from Lagos, I assume. Cornelia, good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And
Thank you very much.
thank you, sir. Jude Ilo also joins us virtually. He is the country director, Open Society Initiative for West Africa, Usiwa. Jude is joining us from Abuja virtually. Jude, good to see you too. Happy Independence.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. All right, let me start from the studio here, Mr. Iwa. Can we begin to quickly identify the issues in our security challenges? You know, when I say issues, I'm talking of issues like banditry, insurgency, and others. Can we quickly identify so that it's easy to then profile solutions along these lines?
There is no doubt that every part of this country is experiencing one form of security challenge or the other. No doubt about that. If it's in the northern part of the country, you have banditry on one hand, you have Boko Haram on one hand, you have also farmer header crisis that is going on, that is devastating our local communities. If you come to the southern part of the country, in the southeast here, you have anarchy has taken over the place. You have secessionists fighting. You have now the secessionist activities has gravitated into burning and killing of government institutions like the police, attacking police station, and then in the other part of the country, the west, you also have secessionist agitations going on, as well as farmer header crisis going on. So every part of the country is experiencing this tragedy.
To what extent are some other issues not connected to those things driving these issues? Some people say we have so much ungoverned spaces in Nigeria. In other words, absence of governance structurally and operationally in so many parts of Nigeria. Bad infrastructure. Here we're talking of bad roads, communication, and all of that.
Of
and
course.
then, of course, the ever perennial problem of poverty and all of that.
All of that come into the mix. It's a mixed match of all kinds of causes, root causes. You have poverty that is there. You have politics of divide and rule that has been there. You have politicians that are not listening to the people, but are listening to themselves and are ruling in accordance with their personal interests rather than the interests of the country. You have the neglect of security agencies, especially the lead security agencies, the police, lack of resources, lack of everything that the police needs to operate. Even manpower, it's a huge problem there. So you have a mixed grill of all kinds of problems. Sometimes you begin to think, where are you going to start from? So, but these are problems that have been with us for many years. Some of them we thought maybe they will just go away, but...
All right. For this not to be just a mere talk shop,
yes,
we'll be providing solutions to them as you have identified.
Absolutely.
Let me get to Jude on our e-platform now. Jude, let me start with you. No doubt, tackling security would probably be the top of the to-do list for Nigeria at 61. How so? How very prominent is this problem? And how urgent is it for us to tackle?
Thank you. Thank you, Benga. I think let me first of all start by extending my heartfelt condolence to the many families in Nigeria who have lost loved ones or maimed or killed in this unconscionable violence, and also to the men and women in uniform who have also paid the ultimate price in trying to secure the country. My heartfelt condolences go out to them. Like you rightly mentioned in your introduction, the fundamental function of the state is to provide security for its citizens. I think my starting premise is that the government of Buhari has failed woefully in securing the country. And the problem with insecurity is that it practically destroys everything else. And so we have kids not going to school. We have people not being able to go to their farms. companies shutting down because they cannot operate. We see what is happening in the southeast, the imposed lockdown that is affecting businesses and making it impossible for people to actually earn their living. And we see all of that across the country. And so insecurity is not only killing people, is not only destroying life, but is also taking away opportunity. But most fundamentally, it is widening the cracks and the fractures that is weakly holding this country together. And so when you look at it from the point of view of instability, not just for Nigeria, for the region, when you look at it from the point of view that more or less the future of Nigeria as a country is imperiled, when you look at it from the point of view that development is almost stagnated simply because we can't function effectively, the psychological burden and the emotional burden that Nigerians are bearing, not being able to leave their houses without fear, not being able to do things that they normally do, but now people are all scared of going out. If you look at that together, you see that this is a country under siege. This is a country that is at the brink of destabilization. And so it is very, very urgent that we wake up to the reality of what is going on. And the starting point for me is an admission by the administration that they've lost the script. And then all of us coming to sit to talk about what can be done.
All right. Thank you very much, Jude. Colonel, for a country like Nigeria, there seems to be a kind of paradox. A nation with a kind of experience, 61 years as an independent nation, almost half of that under military rule. So there's some level of experience in terms of combating crimes under a military rule. And for almost 30 years of our 61 years of independence, we were under military rule. And again, we have a military that is noted for its exploits internally and externally. We've been in ECOMOG, we've restored law and order in other countries, and yet a nation with that kind of military has been battling insurgency, has been battling banditry, and we seems not to be making any headway. There seems to be a paradox here. What has happened?
Thank you very much. I think I go along with the last speaker, and I agree completely with what, in other words, my condolences to those who have lost their lives, both to the pandemic, to the crisis we've been facing, particularly the gruesome murder of the husband of Dora Akinle. My sympathy to the family. And I also agree with the last speaker that the biggest problem we have has to do with the leadership. One of the major problems we have is the lack of sincerity of purpose and the lack of willpower. To what we see is that there is an increasing attempt by the leadership to get us divided. And so the problem we have is that can be better examined from what I would say the three levels of management of national security crisis. They are usually codified as the highest command or management. Then there is a higher and there is a high. Now, the problem we have is essentially one of the highest command. If we take the analogy of the head and the body, hands, and the legs of a body of national security, the head is where everything functions. So first, we don't have the right mental orientation to the crisis we face. 2, there is not appropriate national security architecture for the kind of situation we find ourselves in. And then with this, all other things are not functioning to their optimum because of the lack of appropriate highest command structure, an appropriate, what I will call grand strategy direction. Another way of putting this, there's a lack of a socio-political economic stability strategy. Without this, we'll be putting the cart before the horses. So basically, we have got it wrong for some time, for quite a long time. The reason seems to me clear is because there is, for me, the leadership, from what we see, is not pursuing the national interest. There appears to be a pursuit of self-interest or group interests or ethnic interests at the expense of Nigerian national interests. These are basically the problem that I see. The one way of correcting the problem is that, for example, to show you what I'm trying to get at is that the strategy we need now is one that provides us with problem solution. What we have is, and those problem solutions have to go to the causal roots of our problems. And what are the things that are sustaining the problems we have? Without dealing with these causal roots and what is sustaining the challenges, we keep on going in circles.
Okay, Colonel.
Obviously.
Yeah. When I come back to you,
the refusal, obviously, I mean, this is the refusal of us to deal with one of our major problems, the problems of addressing the national question. It's a problem.
Okay. All right. We'll just add that to some of the problems that Mr. Iwa had identified earlier. The problem of not finding solutions to critical national questions. Even though a lot of people will disagree with your earlier postulation that is a pursuit of personal interest by the leadership that is driving this. Because you also, if you talk of personal interest, the president's home state is engulfed in crisis. If the president was visiting Katsina at the time, was it Kagara that happened that time? When pupils were kidnapped from his school, very close to his hometown, Dara, where he was holidaying. So I'm trying to see how to rationalize that issue of the president's pursuing personal interests as against national interests. But maybe Colonel will talk more about that when we get to it. But let me come to you, because you are a retired police officer. Anywhere, the police in any country is the first line of defense. Some of the problems we have now, which have snowballed into big crises, probably started as what a mere police operation could have dealt with. That police as first line of defense, that line of defense collapsed long ago. How do we fix it? Or if we don't erect that wall of defense back, can we ever make any headway in tackling our security challenges?
I think that we have come to a situation now in tackling security issues that it is time to interrogate the capacity and competence of the security agencies, the internal structures of the security agencies, including that of the military.
Yes.
When you look at it from that context, I mean, on one hand, we said, well, the politicians are pursuing personal interests, but the same politicians have given enough to the military especially, and to a little extent to the police. But we need to interrogate the internal capacity of these agencies, because I know that within the police nothing comes from government.
When you say nothing, what do you mean?
Nothing in the sense of the police living up to its own expectations and working in accordance with their mandate. It's underfunded. Most times they get less than 20% of their budget. It's under well-fed, if there's any word like that. There's no encouragement for them to do what they are expected to do. No training that is going on because government does not fund enough for training. Yeah. And then Colonel Yam talked about strategy and all that. Yeah. It's good. I know that under the office of the National Security Advisor some years back, yes, there was a national strategy for terrorism. To what extent were we able to implement that strategy? I think we should question that too, because nobody talks about strategy in this country. Nobody talks about processes. Nobody talks about systems that are available for us to tackle these issues. So, to a large extent, I think that what these problems has shown us is that it has exposed all the security agencies.
Yeah, that's why I said let's go logically by taking them one after the other. I started with the police because I know you are a retired police.
Yes, I've told you.
That was why I made the postulation that the police ought to be the first line of defense.
Yes.
In any nation.
Yes.
So if that first line of defense is there, only very little problems will escalate beyond the capacity of the police, and then you then begin to enlist the support of other agencies like the military. So if the police ab initio have been incapable of coping with some of the security challenges, what led to that? Has it always been that?
It has always been that.
I don't think so. In the Second Republic, the police in the Second Republic had the capacity to put down any insurrection as at the Second Republic.
Yes.
Because the police was well equipped.
Yes.
Had all
what happened after that? After that.
That's what I'm saying. So it has not always been that. So the police as first line of defense collapsed.
Yes.
How do we fix the problem of the police? Or is it possible to begin to talk of tackling our national security challenges without dealing with the police?
You have to deal with the police.
Exactly. So how do we deal with it? What are the problems?
But just like I told you, you have to look at the internal capacity of this organization.
Okay, so we have identified capacity as well.
Internal capacity that is virtually...
Capacity in what area? Manpower or
manpower, equipment, resources to fund whatever activity. Let me tell you, I was commissioner of police. Luckily, I was commissioner of police in 3 states in Nigeria. Not too long ago. I retired just 3 years back. And I always had to beg governors for fuel. I had to beg governors for vehicles. It goes to that. And let me tell you, as a commissioner of police, my budget to run the state for 3 months a quarter was about 3.1 million.
How many divisions under you?
Well, it depends on the state.
That's what I'm saying.
It depends on the state.
Yeah.
I was commissioner of police in Kaduna. Yeah. I had 10,000 personnel. I had close to 48 police stations. Each of these police stations was getting 45,000 naira, 35 to 45,000 naira per quota.
That's 3 months.
Yes, 3 months. So tell me, how do you tackle security with that kind of funding if you don't beg? At a point, you even have to beg filling stations for fuel. So there's the question of underfunding of police activities.
Okay, so you've talked of capacity in terms of manpower
and no training. Capacity, no training,
and all of that.
No training. Take a look. If you recall very well, during the period of Jonathan, he visited police college.
And he said he didn't know that this was how they...
He didn't know that.
That was the police college.
Yes, police college Ikeja. And look at the conditions in which police officers
I'm sure very little has happened since that time. Sir.
Very little has happened since then.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, you can't.
As regards my next line of action. Let me start down with somebody else. Let me bring in Jude here. Jude, can we actually tackle the problems of security in Nigeria if we don't fix the Nigerian police? And in fixing the Nigerian police, has the time come to disaggregate the police? How can you run police the way we run it in Nigeria? A federal structure, but with a unitary police structure.
Uh, I want to say one thing before I start responding to your question, and that is that our response to insecurity in the country should not necessarily be focused only on the security architecture, because I do believe that some of the drivers of this insecurity and the triggers of insecurity go to the larger question of the quality of governance, the socioeconomic structures and systems that we operate. And so inequality, unemployment, poverty, fear, and ethnic baiting have all come together, to create a convoluted system that is even making the work of the police, the work of the army, the work of security agencies very difficult. So I need us to just pack that somewhere and perhaps get back to it, to look at those larger questions, because the tendency is to respond to insecurity as solely as with security-related responses in terms of military, in terms of police, whereas it goes beyond that. But to your question, I think that even from the last speaker, the answer for me is not necessarily about the structure of the police. I think, this biblical analogy of putting new wine in an old wineskin, it will necessarily implode. That is the fundamental value system that drives policing in Nigeria that is offensive and wrong, that is anti-people, that is focused on regime protection rather than the protection of Nigerian people. I think from that fundamental, you've got a problem. And it has to be rephrased and redesigned a bit more critically to make it people-focused. So first, in trying to reform the police is reforming the philosophy of policing in Nigeria. That has not happened. And if we don't reform that philosophy, if we say, okay, let us have police in the states, they will still be corrupt. They will still not get their funding. They will still work for the politician. If you say, let us have police in the local government, it will still be the same thing. The powerful will always co-opt the structures of security for their own benefit. So addressing that philosophy and having a new approach to policing, in my view, is key. But having said that, I think it's also fundamentally important that we look at the way we treat our security personnel. When you go to other countries, being a policeman is a thing of pride. But when you come to Nigeria, a lot of times being a policeman is a function of not getting an ideal job and then taking whatever is left. And we begin to people such an important agency in the life of the nation with people that are not the best. So the cream, the best brains, the one, the top of the range of people we have are not encouraged to join the police force. Those who do it with much excellence actually understand that it's a sacrifice they are making, going away from a better life to go and suffer. And so if we don't make the police force something to be proud of, a profession that commands respect, a profession that commands affection from Nigerians, we may never get our best there. And people who are there and who are trying to do a good job will constantly live in infamy from what the public perceives to be one of the most corrupt institutions in the country. And that doesn't also help the rank and file to function because they don't feel respected, they don't feel appreciated. My third point will be that across the world. In countries like Canada, where you have a central police system, but that is locally and provincially managed, where the authority rests with the provinces. You have in places where you have state police working independently from the federal police. You have places where you have a hybrid of both. We need to think a bit more creatively about what works for us. That was a reason why we stopped state police. That was a reason. Because before, the regions had their own police. But because of our peculiar ethnic challenges and distrust and abuse, we decided to centralize the police to look more towards the stability of the whole country rather than the stability of just regions. And so we moved from A to Z. Now we want to move from Z to A. We need to think more critically about a middle ground that does three things for this country.
All right.
One, that promotes operational competence at local level for the police. Second, that has a strong framework of accountability for those who exercise that coercive power of the police. And thirdly, that have a prominent role of civilian control and community involvement in policing. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jude. Colonel, I'm sure Colonel is still there. I'll come back to you shortly. I'd like to find out from you whether if we have a police that have been able to do most of the job, whether the military will not be this defocused as we have it. Because I'm sure at the time when the Nigerian military was making exploits in countries like Sierra Leone, like Liberia, under ECOMOG and all of that, the military wasn't this defocused. The military wasn't called upon to come and be settling Yahoo boys, to come and be settling husband and wife quarrel, to come and be chasing armed robbers on the streets of Lagos and all of that. The military was focused. So it was easy for it to go on operational expeditions, do us proud, and come back. But today, that's not the military we have. And it is because the police is or has been neglected to the extent that he cannot play his own responsibilities. We'll come to that's the question I'd like you to address. But then the Commander-in-Chief and President of Nigeria addressed an aspect of our security issues yesterday when he made the Independence Day broadcast. Let's take this excerpt quickly from there, and that will also be part of what we respond to Colonel here.
In the last 4 months, the gallant men and women of the military and security agencies have made tremendous progress in addressing these new security challenges. We are taking the fight to our enemies from all angles, and we are winning. Earlier this year, I launched the Integrated National Security and Waterways Protection Infrastructure, the Deep Blue Project, which is designed to secure Nigerian waters up to the Gulf of Guinea. I am happy to inform Nigerians that we have taken delivery of key assets for this project, and very soon its impact will be felt. In the northeast region alone, over 8,000 Boko Haram terrorists have surrendered. To support our surge approach to fighting banditry, the Nigerian Armed Forces have recruited over 17,000 personnel across all ranks. Furthermore, I have also approved for the Nigerian Police Force to recruit 10,000 police officers annually over the next 6 years. I am also pleased to note that most of the Air Force platforms we acquired over the past 3 years have started to arrive in Nigeria. These will positively impact on security operation in all parts of the country. In line with Section 14, subsection 2b of the 1999 Constitution as amended, the security and welfare of Nigerians continue to be the prime focus on which programs and projects of our government revolves. Therefore, as a government, we are ready to arrest and prosecute all persons inciting violence through words or action. Our resolve for a peaceful, united, and one Nigeria remains resolute and unwavering.
Right. Colonel here, you had the President and Commander-in-Chief there. 17,000 additional personnel for the armed forces across all levels, all cadres. 10,000 police. The president actually gave this order several years back. The first attempt by the police to carry out the presidential directive, ran into a legal hitch. The Police Service Commission says is the one that has the power to recruit and all of that. So we've not even been able to probably recruit the first 10,000. So there will be about 20,000 surplus now that the police ought to recruit under that presidential directive. But address the problem holistically. If we fix the problem, will the military be able to return to its core responsibilities?
Let me begin by making some clarifications. The clarification is to do with what was said about national security architecture. National security architecture is actually more holistic than we tend to look at it. You would have heard the president quoting the provision of the Constitution that government is about welfare and security of the people. People forget that the welfare aspect is part of national security architecture. The welfare aspect, in other countries, you hear terminology like social security. Now, the welfare aspect is what I see as a soft power aspect of national security. What people mistaken is that they see national security only in terms of the hard or military power. I think this is what is really lacking. They both go hand in hand. A national security architecture has to embrace both the soft power and the military hard power. In that regards, you would have seen that whilst you said earlier about line of defense, I'm sorry to put it this way, that you've only spoken of only one aspect of line of defense, which is the horizontal, to do with the relationship between the military and the other agencies like the police. And that's why you were quick to conclude that police is the first line of defense. Not really so. When you, in terms of vertical line of, if you look at the line in terms of vertical, you would find that the first line of defense is actually the soft power. And this means the policy of government. This means how governance structure is laid out. For a long time, the kind of police we have is always been the colonial mentality policing, which is forces of occupation. So the term Nigerian police force still applies while people have moved on to a police service. Now, if we were to have a police service, really, and if we were to follow examples of other federalism, like my colleague earlier mentioned Canada, if you go and check in the Constitution of Canada, Canada and Germany, province is the equivalent of a state in Canada. There and in Germany, which is a federal republic, policing is said to be a local state matter. We have gone against the principle of policing. Police is a civil service. It's not a force. And in that term, the police commission or police, which is the controversy, the president or the prime minister of a country does not appoint police bosses. The police is managed by the people. The people of each, if you say there is a local government, if you say there is a state, if you say there is a province, they manage the police of their area. They recruit and they fire whoever is to head their police forces. They ensure that most of the service personnel are local based. And you don't have a situation where you have a policeman being brought from my area, Cross River, being sent to Sokoto or vice versa. So we got that wrong. So we have to get to the principles of policing, which is one, the police has to be locally managed locally recruited in the main. That is one.
Okay.
Now, once we get that right,
Okay.
we also have to know that in terms of making security everybody's business, we've been paying lip service to that cliche. You have to get the people to be involved in their security. And one way of getting the people getting is that the police have to own the police force.
Okay.
At the moment, the police we have is not the people's police.
Okay.
This is why sometimes if you are watched in Lagos, the OPC have been more reliable in some parts of Lagos than the police force.
Yeah, because the people own the OPC.
The OPC is somebody who is a critical stakeholder in his own security or policing. So we need to correct these distortions.
Okay.
These things, the structure we have now is self-serving because of the colonial drive that still hold Nigeria. Nigeria is still not free. Earlier on, my colleagues talked of we changed the police from state to who are the we? We never had a voice.
All right,
I'm sorry to say that my colleague, there's no time Nigerians have decided what sort of police they have or what sort of national security architecture they have.
Okay, Colonel.
It is very critical.
Yeah, Colonel. Let me stop you there so that. Yes, Colonel. I need to stop you there. Let me put the ball squarely or pass the ball squarely to somebody who should have a cognate experience as a retired police officer. The task of reforming the Nigerian police to have a people's police is a huge one. First of all, I think it was Jude who alluded to the fact that all the police have been engaging in is regime protection. And that is true. If half of the police force, half of the staff strength of the police are busy doing non-policing duty, carry bags for wives of politically exposed persons, doing all right, sir, for local government chairmen, and even Yahoo boys that have made it. You've seen police guarding Yahoo boys everywhere. That's not, so who is then left to protect the society? So the task of reforming the Nigerian police to have a people's police is an enormous one. How do we start?
Okay,
Let's get into your experience.
Let me respond to. There's something Jude said there that is very interesting.
Yeah, but not necessarily losing sight of.
No. There's something Jude said there.
Yeah.
Jude said a police organization needs to have a philosophy, and it's true. Every police organization needs a philosophy.
What's the philosophy of the Nigerian police?
Let me come. So every police organization needs to have a philosophy. Now, when Nigeria transited from military rule to democratic rule, there was no attempt by government to do a proper transition in terms of democratizing the institutions of governments, whether it's ministries or agencies or anything. There was no attempt, maybe because we were in a hurry to drop the military and move on. But there was no attempt, and you can see it even in the governance system. It's still militaristic in thinking, in the way we relate and do things. It's still militaristic. It's still sledgehammer approach to dealing with issues. So there was no transition. One would have expected that the police, for example, would have undergone a series of transition to make it a democratic police. There was an attempt. There was an attempt in making the police go community-oriented policing. And I must say that I was one of those.
Would that be one attempt or several attempts? From Obasanjo up onto Buhari, I can count like 4 different attempts to reform the police.
Okay, let me tell you. Most of those attempts, I know that there was this Damadadi committee and other committees.
There was
most
the
of
one
those,
by the former chairman of Police Service Commission.
Most of those attempts, apart from that of the Police Service Commission that's actually focused on changing the police persona, but most of those ones were more or less like shopping lists. They were more focused on buying construction of police barracks, changing of police uniforms, buying of equipment, rather than the philosophy of policing. Anyway, there was an attempt at community
They
policing.
were
And I
focused more on procurement issues.
Yes, they were focused more on procurement, because the tendency in this country is for us to think that once you give an organization equipment, then
That's the problem.
then you solve
solve
the problem. But equipment are just instruments that help the organization work. The real change comes in the person, the personality, his competence, his skills, his attitudes, his behavior, which a philosophy would have driven, would have addressed. Yeah. So you had community policing that was introduced. I prefer to call it community-oriented policing. I was one of those that introduced community policing in the country. I was one of the first officers that was trained, and I also headed the unit. But you didn't have any government support. You never had any funding, no government support. Before community policing will work, you have...
I know that a lot of the issues around community policing that were driven by donor funds, not if the government...
It was more or less a donor-driven project than a government-driven project. Yeah. So it fizzled out. The whole concept fizzled out. By the time some of us left the place, it was difficult. There was even internal resistance because of a lack of understanding of what this is all about. But community policing, as Jude had said, it involves people. It goes to the root cause of problems and involves a given community. Crime is local, and you must localize policing. You must localize the solution to every community. So, on the basis of that, there has been a lot of problem. Recently, we heard that 11 billion naira was appropriated for community policing. But I can tell you that if you go to the police sector, they don't know anything about it. Nobody knows about the 11 billion. What is this supposed to be? And
what is it meant for?
What is it meant for? What is this supposed to do? Because
this is not about buying or building structures again.
And then the confusion in the community-oriented policing is that a lot of people, even governors and many people, think that community policing, as the name literally sounds, is about every community having its own policing. But that is far from it.
All right. Jude, you started all of this, and I think your attempt that time was to dwell more on the non-kinetic issues around security. I'm sure that was what led to your assertion that time about not having the right type of police that Nigeria needs. We are winding down now. If you were to prioritize all of the issues, which one would you tackle first, so as to have very good result at the end of the day?
Thank you, Benga. I will put three things on the table because, like you said, we're running out of time.
Yes,
I think the first thing that I think is lacking right now is the absence of empathy, sensitivity, and humanity in the way our leaders look at issues of violence and insecurity. We, of course, understand that securing Nigeria is not easy. It's a vast country, vast people, limited government resources, and all of that. But our government has also shown a lack of humanity, lack of sensitivity to what is going on in the country. Even in the president's speech, you will not see an admission of the failure of leadership, of the failure of security, and the modesty to say we are trying, but we know we are failing. And so you see this arrogance that seems to suggest we are the cause of our own problem. People die every day and there is no empathy. Let us start first as a country to make every Nigerian feel that they matter. If one of us is killed, can the government please stop whatever they are doing and acknowledge that their family is grieving? Acknowledge that people are sad. Acknowledge that Nigerians are afraid of leaving their houses now. I think having that level of empathy and connection is a starting point to making every Nigerian involved in securing this country. So that is one. The second thing is that insecurity in Nigeria has become a criminal enterprise, and everybody is cashing out. That has to stop. We cannot be feeding off the blood of our brothers and sisters.
All right,
and government knows what they should do. There has to be accountability. for resources that are being put out on the field. People who kill people in Nigeria should not be brought to the negotiating table. They should be punished.
All right, Jude.
Now violence is becoming a currency of relevance in the country. And you cannot fight insecurity if people know that by creating mayhem, they have a seat at the table.
All right, Jude.
And the final point I want to make is that we need to look at the external dynamics that are driving insecurity. We need to feed our poor. We need to clothe our hungry. We need to give job to the young people. We need to look at the economic and developmental indices.
All right. Thank you so much, Jude. Yeah, those are the non-kinetic problems. I mean, side of the war that I talked about. Colonel, I'll give you just about 30 seconds because we're almost out of time. 30 seconds to just sum up what we need to do. Cornelia. 30
what
seconds,
we need to
please.
do is that there needs to be an orientation. The army, the armed forces we have are not going to be facing an army from outside. There is a change in the nature of war. There are now what are called non-state armed forces. We do not have the orientation or the force that can deal with these non-state armed forces adequately. We need to build more special forces, special operation forces. These are usually people who are trained in unconventional warfare to deal with. Having said that, I must commend the present higher command led by the present chief of defense staff and his service chiefs. The General Irabo and the chief of army staff are doing a very good job. As you would have seen what is happening in Zamfara and in the Northwest. I also wish the president should be less nepotistic. For example, his speech, he was...
Correct. Unfortunately, we don't have time. I would have loved to listen to you to the end of that particular argument, but we don't have time, so we just have to leave it there. Mr. Ewa, I just have to say thank you to you. Is there anything you can say in 10 seconds?
Well,
otherwise, let me just say thank you.
In 10 seconds, let me say that last year, Mr. President promised the police that he was going to focus on them in the next 4 years. We want to see that promise practicalized.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Nigeria at 61, Nigeria's security situation yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That has been the focus of today's edition of Nigeria Independence Special AIT program that has been running since Thursday at this time. Thank you for investing your time with us. As I say, thank you to my guests. Here in the studio, I've had Mr. Austin Iwa, a retired Assistant Inspector General Police. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. And of course, on our virtual platform, we had joined us Mr. Jude Ilo, who is Country Director, Open Society Initiative for West Africa, Osiwa. Jude, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And of course, Colonel Tony Iam, retired as a security analyst. Colonel, good to see your face again too. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for checking out SYMFONI on YouTube. Please be sure to subscribe and like our videos for updates.